and welcome to part of my guide to bass clarinet opera excerpts. So this is obviously the big solo from Verdi's Ernani, Act 3. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening in the opera at this point, as well as some practice and performance tips for this particular excerpt. So this is the very opening of Act 3. Depending on the production, you could be playing this solo while the curtain is still down and then it comes up while you're playing, but that's sort of up to the stage director, so that's impossible to predict. But keep that in mind while you're working on this, that this is the first thing the audience hears to open this act of the performance. So a few things to keep in mind. This is a solo. You are definitely playing almost a voice part. But the clarinets and other instruments are playing with you, and they do have rhythmic parts. So in general, in this excerpt, you want to do a good job of keeping time. You have a little bit more freedom on some of these little 16th note runs to play around just a little bit more, because in those points, you are the only person playing. But I would seriously recommend, whether you're preparing for an audition or an actual performance of this excerpt, practicing with some friends. Find some clarinet friends and give them the parts. It's very sight readable. And just see if they're able to follow what you're doing, because if not, you need to work on being more clear. The committee is going to be listening for that in an audition, and obviously in a performance, you want your colleagues to know where you're going to land on each beat. So definitely keep that in mind while you're practicing this. As far as the drama goes, the beginning of this act opens on Carlos, who is the king and maybe about to be the Holy Roman Emperor, which is obviously a big deal. He is standing in basically a crypt next to Charlemagne's grave and just thinking about his situation. So previously in the opera, Carlos has fallen in love with the leading lady, who is sort of Ernani's girlfriend, but is also engaged to somebody else. So there are 3 dudes who are interested in this lady. And Carlos knows that she's never going to be his because she's betrothed to a nobleman, and even though he wants her, it would be completely improper for the king to be carrying on an affair with a nobleman's wife. So that's out of the question, which is a bummer. Also, Carlos has been plagued by Ernani, who, it turns out, is leading a group of rebels who are trying to maybe murder the king. Not good news for him. And also, literally at this moment, Carlos is waiting on election results to find out if he's going to be the emperor or not. So Carlos has a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of inner turmoil, and you are the voice of that inner turmoil when you are preparing this excerpt, okay? So he is a king, and he does have to sort of keep it together, but in this excerpt, I hear that his inner demons are sort of coming out in the middle of it, and then he sort of pushes all that back down because he has to maintain his composure. So you start out sort of restrained, and then in this accented section in about measure 11 of the excerpt, you can kind of wail a little and sound tormented, and then you have to sort of put that back down. That's a subjective take on this, but I think it makes sense for me. It's always important when you're preparing operas to think about what character you're playing. Are you playing just foreshadowing for the plot? Are you a character's inner voice? What are you doing to serve the drama? And in this case, I think we are Carlos's inner voice. Super, super important to keep that in mind. As far as some musical considerations, you got to be careful with making changes to the music when you're doing an audition, but I would maybe extend some of the slurs into downbeats, especially in the beginning of this, just to get a little bit smoother connection at the ends of phrases. I've provided an annotated part with my suggestions on it, so you can find that in the video description or on the page for Ernani on my website, which I will also link to in the description if you're finding this video on YouTube. I would also consider the articulation changes as part of that Carlos's mood coming out. So really bring out the accents and a little bit of staccato that we have in the middle of this excerpt, and then we go back into a very legato, slurred figuration at the end. So keep that in mind also. And as far as climactic moments go, it's the E natural to B flat at the beginning of measure 12. That's really our big moment in the middle of this. I personally, depending on the tempo and everything, would probably take a breath between those two notes. It's not my ideal musical gesture. So if I were preparing this for an opera, I might play around in rehearsal with breathing in different places, maybe somewhere in measure 11, so I could really bring out that jump. But I would keep that in mind, that that's really, the B flat is where you're going for in this excerpt. So I would think about this entire section in sort of 3 groups. The beginning is Carlos trying to keep it together and sort of failing. So that's from the beginning to about here. I'll play what I think of as the first section of this. So there's your opening section. This is the middle section where I think we can really let some emotions come out to play. So. So in that case, I did take that breath in measure 11 instead. I think I like that, but I haven't put enough time into this to really make a choice there. And that's also, breath marks, a lot of times, personal decision. So do what you can to make the phrase work for you. And for, I mean, I would love to do that whole thing in one breath. I also have asthma, so that's kind of like a personal consideration. But just really think about the breaths in that section. Okay, and then I think of this as almost a coda to the previous sections. So. You'll notice we have a lot of phrases that end on a D, usually a quarter note, sometimes shorter. I don't know if it's coming across in the video, but I am putting just a little bit of vibrato on those. I think in opera especially, a little touch of vibrato makes a lot of sense because you are playing a voice part or just imitating a voice part, right? So I think just a little bit of shimmer on those notes can kind of shape those ends of phrases. You could play around with doing that on the opening or on the very last note too. I'm not sure I'm gonna like this, but let's see how it sounds. That was a little tiny bit of vibrato, and I'm not sure I loved it, but I think it can help you shape the ends of phrases especially. So, like I said, this video is part of a larger project on the bass clarinet in opera. So if you'd like to see the entire project, you can click on over to my website, which is alexdoyleclarinet.com, where you can learn about other romantic opera bass clarinet parts, and hopefully in the future, just bass clarinet parts of all shapes and sizes from all different operas. Or you can check them all out on YouTube as well. Thanks for watching!